Yokoso wa shitare. Welcome back to your regularly scheduled stories from 1,000 years ago in a language that nobody speaks, nobody understands. Translated by your favorite old Japanese nerd, me. But let's not waste any time. We're just gonna get right into this story, okay? So once upon a time, ima wa mukashi, there was a man whose name we do not know. Because the original source, you'll come to find out and you'll see later, is corrupted or missing big chunks of it. And unfortunately, one of those things is this guy's name. However, we do know his job title. He was a Tenyaku no Kami. Basically what that means is he was head doctor. He was the main doctor of the capital. Very skilled physician, knew all about diseases and ailments, typical doctor stuff. And he was very deserving of his title. The text specifically says that he followed his path to the utmost nobility. And he was so good at his job that not only did the emperor rely on him, but everybody in the private sector relied on him too. So he was both a public and a private doctor. He was second to none in his job. But then there came the day of Tanabata. And if you guys know what Tanabata is, it's the 7th day of the 7th month. I don't know why 7 is so significant, but it's actually a tradition, I believe, that comes from China. And it has something to do with an old ancient story about the orb weaver, Orihime, the orb weaver? Or the weaver maid, Orihime, and the young herdsman, Hikoboshi, and their starred because they're actually in the stars. Like, there's a star that is called the Orihime, and there's a star that's called the Hikoboshi. That's literally what the Boshi and Hikoboshi means. Hoshi, Boshi, anyway. Suffice to say, this whole thing was kind of a big deal. Big festival. Everyone was looking forward to it, and they all had their various festivities. And that was very much true for all the doctors, for all the Tenyaku people. And so they decided they were going to throw a big party, big doctors party. And so this man, our main character, the Tenyaku no Kami, the head of all of the doctors, because that's what Kami means, is head, literally head, he decided he was going to throw one big old shindig at his place. Or specifically it says at the ryo, which means something in modern terms like the dormitories. So I don't know exactly where this was, but it was a big building, big fancy nice building where people did official business stuff, doctor stuff. And so all the doctors got together, they got in this building, they rolled out some fancy mats, and everybody brought a little bit of food and a lot of drink. And by drink, I mean sake, because everybody was going to have a good time. Not that I would know, I don't actually drink alcohol, so I wouldn't know. And while these fine gentlemen were enjoying their day, enjoying the Tanabata festival, even though there wasn't really a festival, they were just partying. But while they were sitting there enjoying their time together, suddenly a woman showed up. And looking at this woman immediately, you could tell she wasn't a commoner, she wasn't a peasant, but she wasn't particularly high on the nobility spectrum. She appeared to be about 50 years old or so, wearing a pale yellow kimono and some really strange, odd-looking hakama. Hakama being the pants that they wore, the pleated, big, baggy trousers that they wore in ancient Japan. But the most distinctive thing about her was her skin was this pale blue. Like, clearly this woman was not right. I'm assuming this is kind of what it means when we say people turn green when they're sick. There's a lack of blood flow in the face and in the skin, and everything looks kind of, well, pale and unlively and not good. You know, she just was not a good color. She was clearly sick. And not only was her skin discolored and suggesting of sickness, but she was also a little bit inflamed, I think is the right term. Or in other words, she looked kind of swollen. Her skin was puffed up and not natural. I don't exactly know how to picture it, but specifically the term that it uses is buyu buyu to haretaru. Buyu buyo is the old Japanese term for the modern buyo buyo, which sounds a little bit silly, but automatopoeia is how Japanese just normally speak. But it means flabby, not pudgy, but like wobbly, bouncy, boingy, like, you know, if you poke some jello. And haretaru comes from the verb haru, classical Japanese, modern hareru, which means to be inflamed, to be puffed up, kind of like that. And though I can't quite picture perfectly what it looks like, the point is this woman is clearly sick. Like, she is not doing well. And the last thing that it mentions about this woman's appearance is that she is being led by a servant of hers by the hand. A servant girl is helping make sure she gets to where she's trying to go, propping her up and leading her to where she needs to be. But this sickly 50-year-old woman shows up at this place where all these doctors are hanging out. And as soon as she enters the premises, everyone instantly notices her and starts thinking, what's going on here? This is unusual. And once everybody's focus is trained on her, the woman starts speaking. Now, in the original story, she doesn't address them, but in English, it doesn't quite work without addressing them, so I'm going to say that she addresses them, but she doesn't actually address them. She just instantly starts talking about herself. Good sirs, for 5 or 6 years, I've been suffering from this illness that you can see with me now. And I thought many times to myself, I wish I could call on an esteemed noble doctor to help me fix this disease. However, I live so far out into the countryside that it would be a waste to bring any great lord out there. Not that any of them could afford to do it anyway. Why should they come all the way out into the middle of nowhere for nobody like me? So I've resolved that I will be the one to go to the doctors. And I felt it would be best if I myself went to a place wherein was gathering an abundance of esteemed and excellent doctors such as yourselves. And in doing so, I could get many professional opinions on what could possibly be bothering me, and I myself can come to some decision by listening to all of you and your wise counsel. And with all of that being considered, please, I beg of you, good sirs, look in on me and tell me what I might do to be healed. And as soon as she finished saying this, she threw herself down on the floor and prostrated herself before all of these high-ranking noblemen. Well, technically, I don't think all of them are particularly high-ranking, but they're doctors. This is something in ancient cultures that we see time and time again, is that doctors are very esteemed because when you live in a culture where people didn't have a very deep scientific understanding of medicine, anybody who could relieve a little bit of physical ailments from other people they were amazing. Like, wow, we love these guys. So they were usually very much respected. No difference here. And of course, all the doctors, beginning from the head doctor, our Tenyaku no Kami, who we're mostly dealing with today, all the way down to the lowest servant, they all heard this woman's story, and they were moved by it, like it was touching. Some of them pulled a little bit of a Jurassic Park and said something to the effect of, "Clever girl." Others said something like, "Indeed, what a wise decision this woman has made." And our Tenyaku no Kami, the head guy, the one we're focused on today, looked around at all the gentlemen and said, "Well then, good sirs, let us heal this woman. For my money, I'm pretty sure what she has is sumbaku." Now, you may be asking yourself, what is sumbaku? I'm going to get into that, but for now we'll just leave it. But to corroborate his findings, or to corroborate his own opinions, he called another particularly skilled doctor from amidst this plethora of fine noblemen and told him, "Please, sir, take a look at this woman. What do you think ails her?" And this particularly skilled doctor looked at her and instantly said, "For a fact, it's sumbaku." And then the Tenyaku no Kami looked at this doctor and said, "Well, how best do you think we can treat her?" And the skilled doctor said, "We don't know. We don't actually know what he said." Like I said in the beginning, there are parts of this story that are missing from whatever original source we got it from. And this story in particular, has a huge chunk just gone. We don't know what it says. We're assuming that this was the point when that skilled doctor explained a whole prescription, a whole method that he had for curing sumbaku. But at the very least, you can tell us what sumbaku is. Yes, I'm going to tell you what sumbaku is. So let's break it down. The word sumbaku has two parts to it. Sun and haku. Sun was a measurement of length in ancient Japan. So think long. That's what sun means, essentially. Even though a sun wasn't particularly long, I think a sun was roughly equivalent to an inch, but a sun was a measurement of length that denoted length. And haku meant white. And when you combine them together, you get sumbaku. The ha from haku becomes ba, but you get sumbaku. So think to yourself, what's something that's white and long and causes people problems? Yeah, it's a tapeworm. It's an old saying that they used to have for tapeworm, sumbaku, that they don't use anymore. I can't remember what the normal Japanese word for it is. I don't care to know, because if you know anything about tapeworms, they're gross. They're really gross. And I will warn you, this story and the next several stories that come after it all involve doctors. And doctors do not have a pretty job. Let's just say that. So prepare yourself, because what happens next isn't pretty. But anyway, we don't know what this skilled doctor said, what exactly he prescribed, but he prescribed something. And after doing exactly as he said, suddenly a small white thing that had somewhat the appearance of mugi. Mugi is like barley. So a small white barley looking thing suddenly stuck out. Stuck out of where, you might ask? Well, if you know anything about tapeworms, they live in your intestines. And your intestines are connected to a part of your body that I don't want to describe because it's gross. Because it's a tapeworm. It's a tapeworm. It's gross. It's gross. I'm not going to say any more. If you're really curious, you can look up on how to take a tapeworm out of somebody, but I'm not going to get into it. And the story doesn't actually mention where it comes out of. Thankfully, that whole part is just missing. So I'm not going to use the word. I'm not going to tell you where it came out of. Just that tapeworms live in your intestine, and this was coming out of a place near the intestine. We can pretty much guess. Okay, but so this white bodily looking thing is now sticking out of the place, and they grab it and they start pulling. And they pull and they pull and they pull. And it's long. It's so long. And as they're pulling it out and retrieving it, they're also wrapping it around one of the pillars in the building that they're in. And the more of this tapeworm that they pull out of this woman, the more her skin starts livening up, the more the color returns to her nose, it specifically says, the more her eyes start shining like normal, and the more and more she starts taking on the appearance of a normal person. So immediate effects is what they're saying, which I don't think that's actually how treating a tapeworm goes, but it's old Japanese. We'll just let them have their tall tales. And eventually, they retrieve the entirety of the tapeworm. They completely pull it out, it's all gone, and now this woman is as good as new. Ultimately, this one parasite, this one single creature, was 8 hiro in length. And hiro, if I remember, is 8 arm spans. So think 8 arm spans long. Unfortunately, I can't stretch out my arms the whole way because my camera isn't big enough for that. But 8 full arm spans. That's a really long, gross little thing. But they got it out, and the woman felt better. And of course, all of the doctors, from the greatest to the least, cheered and clapped. I don't know if they actually clapped, and I don't know how much they cheered. But it does say that they were all very pleased and very happy, and it was a job well done. Woman cured, mission accomplished, gentlemen. And after this, the woman, who I'm sure felt extremely grateful, did follow up with the doctors. Good sirs, is there anything else that I need to do to treat this? Any after treatments that I need to look out for? And they just simply said, well, ma'am, the only thing you really ought to do is make sure that you soak for a bit in some steamy hot water with a little bit of yokui added to it. A mixture of yokui and hot water. Now, what is yokui? I looked it up, and I think it's it's an herb. It's an herb of sorts called Job's Tears. Apparently, it has some kind of medicinal properties, but specifically, they just say to make sure that she bathes in this concoction that's supposedly good for you. I don't know all the details, but it's just something to probably help with any injuries that may have occurred during the procedure, or just general cleanliness and whatnot. And it's fine. But after that, she was good. She was all taken care of. And with that, mission accomplished. The good doctors made sure that she got along on her way safe and sound. And thus is it said that in old times, even among the lowest born of peasants, there were doctors who were so skilled and so talented at their jobs. And that's it. That's the story. And I don't have anything really to add by way of commentary. So, ancient Japanese healthcare. How do you like it? It's kind of gross, but then healthcare in general is kind of gross. But anyway, if you like what you heard, please feel free to like this video. But also, if you like ancient Japanese culture, ancient Japanese literature, or you just like amateur storytelling, please feel free to not only like this video, but subscribe to the channel as well. It would be most appreciative. And after you get done with this video, go ahead and show up all your weeb Japanese friends with your newly accrued knowledge of ancient Japanese literature. Please share it with them so they can be eternally grateful to you for giving them these tidbits of ancient Japanese knowledge. And lastly, thank you very much. Ito katejike no koso haberi kere. And with that, I've got nothing else to say at this time. So thank you, and we'll see you at a later date. Goodbye.